Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast, presented by Zwift for the UAE Team Emirates preview. One of the best teams in the world the last 2 years, the best team in the world in 2021. In 2022, they also won a lot, but not as successful a season, one would think, as 2021. Pogacar was still the driving force behind the team, 48 race wins, of which they had a monument in there, Lombardia. Strada Bianca is important to this team as sort of semi-Italian team. 18 World Tour wins in all three Grand Tours, thanks to Covey on Fedaya, and 3 TDF stage wins and a second for Pogacar. So it's a really good season. The wins were spread out in World Tour level between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different riders. So it wasn't just all Pog. That might even be more than Jumbo Visma winning their diversity of winners. But yeah, how would you rate the season of UAE, Benji? Because, okay, they didn't win the Tour, but it's still a damn good year.
Yeah, certainly a damn good year. Now, I think there's several parts to the season of UAE because they start off with the Spring Classics, and we see that Pogacar wins Strade, like you mentioned. But by the time we reach Sanremo, then we've already had Tirreno Adriatico, where your boy Pogacar once again won 2 stages, and the GC UAE Tour has passed 2 stage wins and GC at UAE Tour, and there was this like veil of invincibility around Pogacar by the time we reached Milano Sanremo, because I swear that people were talking about him attacking on the Cipressa, dropping everyone, and not being caught anymore. And that's something that I had zero belief in. And I thought that it would be very difficult to still win that race for him, just like for many others, because there's kind of a lottery aspect to that race, I would say. Now, I would argue that Milano Sanremo wasn't necessarily the race that said, okay, Pogacar's not invincible. Yeah, sure, it said that to a few people that thought he would attack on the Cipressa, but we started moving further in the season and we see other races happen. Now, the second chapter of this team is that they have races that are stage races where Pogacar can't ride. And those races are done in some kind of free-for-all fashion, no? Because we saw Almeida, Ayuso all being leaders at Catalunya, for example. I think Catalunya was really the moment where we realized, like, okay, every leader here is riding for themselves. Even arguably, Soler in that race was going for his own at a certain point. And it really the moment on Boitol, for example, stage 4 in Catalonia, Almeida wins that stage. Then stage 6, we have Almeida at the start of the stage missing that move with Plap, Carapaz, and Higuita, where they opened up the race on the first climb. And there we see some kind of hierarchy growing in that team where Soler becomes a domestique, but Ayuso and Almeida aren't. And at the end of the stage, Ayuso attacks the group with Almeida in a descent, for example. So at this stage, at the end, we were like, what's happening here? Why are they not working for each other as GC leaders? Is there like an inside war between these riders? But as the season grew further and further, I think we both realized that is this team's goal to be the best team in the world in terms of the UCI ranking. And I think a lot of people don't see it that way. They don't see the best team in the world as the best team in the UCI rankings. They see the best team in the world, the team that wins the best races throughout the season. And that's one aspect to UAE as well. Now, I've glanced over a few things, like, for example, Pogacar top 5ing the Ronde van Vlaanderen, for example, missing out on the decisive move in Dwars door Vlaanderen. Like, he was really strong there, and he was definitely the leader in those races. But in all but the Grand Tour races, do you feel like they kind of shoot in their own foot by doing that free-for-all strategy?
Oh, I think the Vuelta is actually the big one where you get a lot of points for third and fifth or sixth, whatever it was with Almeida, Ayuso podium, but they missed out on wins. Ayuso should have won stage 20. He won
Yeah.
that one sprint easily after, I think, pulling back Aronsman for Almeida's GC. He should have won that stage easily if they'd gone all in for him, catching the break of Carapaz, because that break was finessing so much. So they, I mean, as an Ayuso believer, it suits me because it's not as obvious when he wins something big this year, but he should already have a couple of World Tour wins on the board. And Catalunya was the same.
Yeah.
On the stage O'Connor won on La Molina, if they just pulled that back, he clapped everyone in that sprint. He beat Higuita
And
easily.
in the Barcelona stage, was there also not a situation where they both started attacking the group or something in the
Yeah,
end?
it was a
But
mess.
they both have a sprint at the end. Obviously, I would argue, like you would argue, that Ayuso's sprint is better at the end. So Almeida should have folded into a domestique role, even though Almeida's closer in GC there. So there's a kind of a mess situation there created from the stages before. But I agree, there's a bit of a mess there. And as a consequence of their strategy to get as many riders in the top 5 of these 1 week races and even the Vuelta, we notice that they lose out on stage wins, which I guess, depending on their inner goal and the goal that their sponsor wants, which I guess is the fact that the sponsor wants to see their name at the top of the UCI ranking, then I guess they're doing the right thing. But as a cycling fan, I'd rather see them hunt for stage wins than try and get 5th in GC next to already having a 3rd in GC, for example. So that's just my take on that.
And
Now
the
on to Grand
Vuelta.
Tours. Oh, yeah? Go ahead.
Remember, he was with Covey? And Covey, Ayuso was like, bro, I got 1,300 watts for 10 seconds under the bonnet. Just leave me out. It'll be sweet. And Covey was like, nope. And then Palance came out of nowhere. And Ayuso, like, what, he gapped everyone, I think, coming second.
Yeah.
No one would lead him out all year. Like, the guy's virtually Pog level in reduced groups. Is someone going to lead him out next year?
I would love to see the team realize that and actually use that to its full potential, because this guy can win those stages in GC groups that come to the line. He can be the kind of Bilbao character in Basque Country. Was it Basque Country?
Good comparison.
That kind of thing. But when it comes to Grand Tours for a second, we've spoken about Pogacar. We've spoken about Ayuso a lot. Haven't spoken much about Almeida. He was prominent in the Giro, obviously off the back of the GC group every time, but he was prominent. And a lot of memes showing up on the internet that he would always drop and so forth and then hang behind the GC group for like the entire climb. And by the end, he might come back or he might not. But he was about to come 4th in the Giro, or 3rd if he had a glorious time trial. But I'd say we can safely assume that he would have landed probably 4th at the end of the Giro if he didn't have COVID in the last, 4 days of the race. So he had to leave the race. That's a real bummer, I think. But he also wouldn't have gotten a podium, which, honestly, Ayuso is doing in the Vuelta. Ayuso getting 3rd in the Vuelta puts, for me, and I think for many people and for you, 100% Ayuso above Almeida for next season, which I think is an obvious one now. So the order is simple: Pogacar, Ayuso, and Almeida. And Ayuso's crawling towards Pogacar, and we'll see what happens in 2023 there, I would argue. But I think the most important one is the Tour de France, eh? How do you think Tadej lost? What are like the multiple reasons?
First of all, not being on Zwift enough is number one. Speaking of which, if you want to be on Zwift this week, it's one of the best weeks of the year. Tour de Zwift stages 1 and 2 are up and going this week. You can build up your fitness on Tour de Zwift. It finishes on the 12th, so there's a couple of stages probably left for you to do. The biggest party yet on Zwift, 8 stages in 8 different worlds featuring 24 unique and exciting routes. There's also a sweet Tour de Zwift Pedal Mafia kit that accompanies it as well. The artwork's brilliant as always. Go and check it out. And if you haven't got Zwift, or maybe you need an indoor trainer and you're in North America or the EU, the UK, go to Zwift.com and check out the Zwift Hub, the most affordable, best priced trainer, smart trainer, direct drive on the market. How did Pog lose the tour? Because Vingegaard was a better time trialist and a better climber, I guess. Like, that is the simple answer at the end of the day. And I think one thing that's been lost, Col de Granon was great and all. Like, I went from Kyrie Irving to not Kyrie Irving anymore in terms of being a flat earther. That was great. But like every other mountain stage after that, Vingegaard was stronger too. Like, could have dropped him on Pagure, could have dropped him on Alpe d'Huez, did drop him on Altacam, could have dropped him on Périgord, I think. So, and at least for sure, Pog wasn't stronger because he didn't drop him once. So, like, there wasn't really much Pog could do, to be honest. I think the biggest problem was they lacked some rouleur strength. Now, Trentin was out with COVID or something before the race. Hirschi was also under the weather. I'm still a Hirschi believer. I still believe in Hirschi. I think he can win LBL this year. But they didn't fix that.
Yeah.
They brought in Yates and Vine and co, if we go to the incoming transfers, but they went after Kung and he didn't move. And so really, okay, Trentin and Bjerg, it is an upgrade, and Hirschi, but there's no super ruler to match Laporte, Van Hooijdonk, Van Aert.
I agree with that. And another aspect to that is, I would argue that even with Vingegaard being a better climber and a time trialist, there's still ways that UAE might have had a better chance of potentially figuring something out to throw it the other way around. Because, for example, the cobble stage as well. Let's say that they've got a better breakaway management, that they've got a better rider that can control these satellite riders and breakaways. Let's say that this rider is also a good cobbler, like a Søren Kragh Andersen, like whatever, Stuyven, for example. If those are the riders, then they can help Pogacar gain even more time in that cobble stage, because he lost time in the last 10 kilometers towards the group of Vingegaard and the group of Roglic. So if that was not happening, then I argue would have gained more time there and the gap would have been bigger, and maybe Jumbo would have tried crazier strategies to try and do something. I made a mistake that way. I think there's always ways where the tiniest of things, the tiniest of more support on these stages could have changed the outcome of the overall race. Now, I agree, Vingegaard was a better climber over Pogacar, so at the end of the day, that's what decided the Tour de France. Let's be honest about it. There's also the aspect of Roglic. I think Pogacar did spend quite a bit of energy chasing down Roglic when it maybe wasn't 100% necessary. And then on Galibier, he pushed forward on Granon and so forth. But I think the thing you pointed out, which is that breakaway management, which is that part of the team, is not 100% fixed. I agree. But do you think that, for example, we've seen Colby in like hilly stages. We've seen him do cobble stuff in the past, but not at this level, eh? Can he at some point still break forward? Do you not believe it? Come on, Colby Stan over here.
Come on, you know what race he's going to. He's going to the Giro. And...
yeah, he is. I know, but like in a few years, I mean.
Imagine you got on the run into Calais, 40 km/h crosswinds. You got Luke Rowe, Nathan Van Hooijdonk and Dylan Van Baal, and then Alessandro Govi.
Wait. Think back for a second. 4 years ago, Mes Pedersen, when he was in the mountain train of... Was he in a mountain train of somebody? I don't even know.
Yeah, of Port. He carried Port around his pocket for, the whole race.
Søren Kragh Andersen in the mountain train of Dumoulin 6 years ago. Yeah. These riders were not at the level that they are now, or at their peak, because Søren Kragh Andersen hasn't been at his peak in recent days, even though at Milano-San Remo he was great. But can Corey become that in 3-4 years? Potentially, but he's not there. So for 2023, they don't have that replacement unless they get it in the transfer. So yeah, I agree. Let's get to the transfers quickly. Outgoing, Rui Costa, Gaviria, Richese, Mirza, Troya, Suter, Ardilla. Let's be honest about it. They're replaceable.
Not missing much. Yeah, not missing much, right? Gaviria probably on a healthy 7 figures. Machin was like he wasn't very professional. And Machin's always pretty nice about the riders, except for Aru, I think, or whoever. They weren't very nice about Aru, I think. But he usually is very nice about the riders. And Gaviria leaves on sort of meh terms, it seems. They're all replaceable. Ardila won Baby Giro in 2019 and did nothing. He goes to Burgos. Brunel retired. Brunel was weird. He was a rouleur signed from FDJ and actually quite a lot of talent. He's 24. He just retired during the year and then joined a French club team a couple of months later.
And started winning.
Guadeloupe, yes. It was just bizarre. Obviously a lot of talent, but doesn't have it, doesn't want to do it. So they signed Michael Vink from Bolton Equities. So that's like a sponsor signing. So that's fine. That's sort of the Mirza replacement. The weird ones, before we get to the big ticket items, Sjoerd backs Benji. That seems like you can't tell me this team had Sjoerd backs in their plans this year. He won Coppa Agostini and they just gave him a contract. That's only unless Tour de Luxembourg 2nd and a 5th on stages and a 4th on GC was enough to get a 27-year-old contract at UAE. And listen, you got a 2-year deal, whatever, but I don't really understand the signing, to be honest.
I think that Sjoerd Bucks might be underrated compared to what you say, but I also don't think he's necessarily a UAE standard rider at the moment yet, from what I've seen throughout the year. I think he's got an engine. I think the Dutch Championships was a race where he was really prominent, where he was like fighting 75 Jumbo riders, and he got pretty close if I recall, but it's very far in my memory. Um, Might have been last year even, but yeah, last year, 2021, was fighting 75 Jumbo riders and eventually lost because I think Jumbo riders, someone started blocking the opponents in the race. That's a pretty shady strategy, but hey, it happened. Anyway, when it comes to Sjoerd Bucks, I think he's got an engine. I think he, I think he's just an addition for the Cobble squad. I think he's some kind of addition for brake management, but not the Tour de France. So that's not there yet unless he makes a step up in the spring season that I haven't seen yet from him so far. But I also wouldn't say he's like a random peasant that they found by the side of the street. I think there's something there, but not a UAE status rider. And
Oh no,
and we
he'll be fine. Like in the Italian one days, and whether I don't make the Tour de France squad, I'm just saying like it seems like he just won that one race, and they like you're in. Novak's a climber. He was actually really strong at Bahrain. He would have won on Fedaya from the break, but the team sold him. They made him wait as a satellite rider for Landa, who didn't need a satellite rider. So he missed out on that. Big shame for him. So I'll be interested to see how he goes. But he's Slovenian. Maybe he fits in the Polance role for Pog in a fair few races. Großschartner is another one who is like a fringe, not fringe. He has top 10 Grand Tours before, regularly top 10s, I think. 1 week in GC, he does have like a little bit of punch. He can be in that Italian one-day squad. He did Piemonte, etc. But
Austrian Soler?
This is just why are they signing Felix Großschartner? Like, how does he move the needle for them?
I'm kind of like, I think I mentioned it, like, it feels like when it comes to domestique work, an Austrian Soler. Like, Soler has his tendencies on the side.
Disrespect to Soler. He's a god,
Nah,
dude.
I think
I looked
Großschartner
into
is
Soler.
decent. Okay.
Top 10 rider in world. Okay, no, that's ridiculous. I retract that. Don't edit it out, but I retract that. Top 5 domestique in the world.
I want everybody that's listening to this podcast to cut out the part where Patrick says that Soler is a top 10 rider in the world and paste it all over Twitter, please.
He's actually top 5 domestique, seriously, in the world.
He was really good this year. Like, he got a lot of criticism during Catalonia when he like was domestiquing and then went to the side, went to the car, and then disappeared. But during the Tour de France,
he'd been pulling for 70 kilometers, and Ayuso was refusing to do anything. He's like, "What the fuck is this?" I would also refuse to be a domestique for Ayuso and Almeida.
Especially when they're like countering each other in the races that they're riding. But I will say, Soler, Maika, they've done better as a domestique than I expected them to do before the season started. 100%. And that's what I think, like, when it comes to Großschartner, maybe there's something there that I haven't noticed when it comes to domestique work. I think in some races, I've seen him be a domestique, but never at the level where I'm like, okay, this can be a domestique for a Pogacar or something. Unless he's an addition for the Hill Classics team, for example, to try and get some stuff there, because they haven't been the strongest in the Hill Classics team with like another big name that's joining. Adam Yates, for example, seems like a rider that fits really well for the one-day races and the one-week races. One-day races being an LBL and a Lombardia once again, which a Großschartner could also ride. Which, another signing, Tim Wellens, also could fit for an Amstel, a Flesh, a Domestique, LBL as a Domestique, for example, Cobble Classics as a Domestique. Like, I'm going over them quickly now, but from these three riders, what do you have to say about Tim Wellens and Adam Yates?
Well, I was looking into the UAE signings because they're signing a lot of riders from like 68 kilos, 67 kilos to 70 kilos. And I thought, are they signing versatile sort of Benoit style guys or in that frame and stature and versatility across races? Is it for the UCI points? Because they can score a lot of UCI points throughout the year. But then I was also looking into like their performance guys. I think one of them's left, but Jerome Swart and John Wakefield, they were both there, at least last year when these signings
Yeah.
were made. And they developed this thing called a compound score, well, partly developed it with Sprague and Leo. I think Sprague's pretty well known. I remember him from Golden Cheetah or something. But anyway, compound score
Italia?
is like a metric to evaluate performance, and it's absolute power output times watts per kilo. And basically, the riders that will score really high on compound score, I think, will be the riders with like 5 minutes, really good 5 minutes, who weigh 67 to 72 kilos, who also climb pretty well, which is riders like Tim Wellens, Felix Großschartner, Brandon McNulty, maybe a Finn Fisher Black, I don't know. So Großschartner too, probably. So are they using that metric to sign riders? I don't know. Maybe it's just a performance metric. But that could be into it, or it could just be, well, because like Tim Wellens has a heat allergy, right? Can he even do the tour? And he won't take any medication for it.
But the thing with Tim Wellens' heat allergy is that I need to rewatch the races that he's ridden. Like, he was great at a rainy Giro in the past, but he's also on Vuelta stages where I swear was sunny.
He won the two. Wasn't it the November Vuelta? I reckon it was the November
it was.
Vuelta. It was in November.
It
Yeah,
was.
that was it. It was in. He won one of them in literally November. So it's not that hot. That's why.
That explains a lot.
This is only Vuelta 2.
Exactly.
Ever.
So I'm guessing that makes it difficult for the Tour de France and for the Vuelta. And I'm more looking at him being an addition to the Cobble team, being in support of Pogacar in races that Pogacar starts, and in other races being a rider in the Dwars door Vlaanderen, for example, that can go for his own, stuff like that. But also when it comes to the Hill Classics, he's also an addition to the team. So I'd also consider that. And maybe they're also just looking for someone to send to Tour de Pologne or something as leader. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Like, they still want to. They didn't win a World Tour 1 week this year outside of Pogacar. So they still want to win World Tour 1 weeks. And with this team, they really need to be winning them. Yates, they signed. I did a video on Lanterne Rouge YouTube channel. He's actually a really, really good one-day racer. We saw that in Canada. We've seen that in Italian Classics. Yeah. He's a top level one-day racer. That also takes pressure off Pogacar. What if Pogacar wants to do Giro of Vuelta in 2024? And then they need to have a strong team at Lombardia, this team. And the Italian Classics. It's very important for them. So Yates, along with maybe Wellens or other people, can be a spearhead for those races. So that frees up Pogacar. I think a lot of this is diversification away from Pogacar. Now, whether these guys are truly top, those three that we mentioned, I'm not sure. Vine, on the other hand, is the wild card, bought out from Alpecin de Koenig. The team, by the way, won't get enough credit for it because I think they were interested pre-Vuelta. So more credit to UAE. They didn't just see the Vuelta stage wins. And then it's obvious, of course. Vine's probably got more untapped potential than Yates, Wellens, Großschartner, who've been at top teams for a few years. What do you think they'll do with him? What would you do with him? Is he just Tour de France, GC, domestique?
Well, when it comes to Jay Vine, we know a few things. We know that 2 years ago, he already rode the Vuelta in very fast after he joined from the Zwift Academy to Alpecin. And in that Vuelta, he nearly won a stage after he got hit by the car. Bardet won that stage, if I recall correctly. And I feel like because he didn't win that stage, he kind of moved a step back in people's minds because it took, well, obviously, Bessèges, that climb towards the end of that race in 2022, he was shown there again against Johannesson, but mainstream cycling fans don't watch Étoile de Bessèges. That's for the low lives that we are, Patrick. And then we noticed throughout the season that in Norway, for example, he started moving up with Remco. Plapp in that race was really strong in that race. But it wasn't until the Vuelta where he started winning at World Tour level. Because I swear he did Paris and didn't really have a good race there. And then he showed up to the Vuelta. He had those 2 stage wins, one from the breakaway, one from the GC group where he tagged a bit earlier than the other GC riders. And that's the moment that he broke out for many people. But he already had such a progression over the last 2 years before that. Because if you can already win a Vuelta stage from the break against the likes of Bardet in 2021, if you don't get hit by your car, then it's not that big of a leap to win again in the breakaway. But the numbers that he was pushing in the 2022 Vuelta were just bloody strong. Let's be honest about it. And as a consequence of that, we know that he's a top level climber. The question now is, can he become a top level time trialist? He has the power on paper for it, but it's not just about power. It's all about aero and so forth. Can he get into the right position? Stuff like that. Plenty of stuff. Can he spend enough time in the wind tunnel to figure that out? I think UAE will probably do that. I think they have the money for that stuff. But how will they test that? Are they going to send them to 1 week races first, like a Paris or a Tirreno? I think he's doing
We'll know while this is
Tirreno.
being edited. He's got the time trial championships in a couple of days or tomorrow. So
Exactly.
partial answer there.
Tirreno is the one he's doing, I think, or Paris. One of the 2 he's doing. I think it was Tirreno. Not sure about it, but we might see something there in that San Benedetto del Tronto time trial, or is it in Camaiore this time around at the start? I don't remember which of the 2 stages it was, but there's a time trial in there that he might show that again. I'm mostly curious about his time trial skill first and his ability in a 1 week first, because he's on paper going to the Giro d'Italia according to the stuff we've heard so far when it comes to UAE. And if he goes to the Giro d'Italia, I would personally expect him to be there as a GC leader alongside the already announced Almeida. Almeida said that in Portuguese press that he's doing the Giro. So if Almeida's doing the Giro, we know that he's a rider that can top 5 the Giro, but against Evenepoel, Roglic, Thomas, it's going to be difficult for Almeida to get on the podium. I would love it because I genuinely am, I would argue I'm an Almeida fan, and it might have been accidental because I started shouting for Almeida for 2 Giros now, so I might do it for a third one again. But I think it's good to have a second rider next to Almeida, like a Vine, that also is a co-leader in that race, and then we'll see where it goes. But for that Giro, he requires a time trial skill, and I need to see that properly first.
Yeah, so that leaves the question of who will go to the Tour, and I think McNulty's schedule, I'm not sure what it is, whether he's doing Giro to go for GC as well, and Yates will slot into the Tour. I think that's what might happen. And then otherwise the team will largely be the same. But yeah, the team's gotten a lot stronger in terms of like the points should go up from non-POG sources. The might even be try co-leadership. Maybe even they don't need to have POG peak for UAE Tour because they've got Adam Yates, the UAE Tour master. The UAE Tour squad, I think, is ridiculous. It's like Pogacar, Yates,
Can they
Vine.
fill the entire podium? I think Remco's going, no?
Yeah, he is. Remco. Yeah, doing San Juan, UAE, and yeah, and in the Giro. But yeah, they've gotten a lot stronger. The key will be, I guess, how do they go about constructing their Tour de France squad, and how do they give, like, does Yates, he knows he's a domestique, right, if he goes to the Tour de France, or do they
Yeah.
try co-leadership with Yates to the Tour? Like, what? Okay, the Tour will be Bennett, Soler, Micah, Hirschi, Trenton, Bjerg, Pogacar, and let's say Yates. What role is Yates in that? Didn't Micah drop him half the time last year?
He did, but when it comes to Yates, we need to keep in mind that Micah also got dropped by Super Domestiques when he was going for his own GC. Now that he's a Super Domestique,
True.
he seems to get further into the class because he might know in his head, okay, I can stop here in a kilometer, for example. I don't need to continue holding a bit of tempo after I drop, for example. Maybe that's something in the mind of those riders where if they know they can completely drop after their effort, they might be able to go all out. While if they need to hold on to the finish, they might drop a bit earlier to make sure they stay on a rough gap of the front, for example. That being said, I think there is a role as domestique for Adam Yates laid out for him, but I want to see it first. In the same way that I wasn't sure about Micah and Soler in the past, they've proven that they can be domestiques. I want to see it from Yates first. He's had wonderful performance in the past, but is he consistent enough? Does he need to be? Because it's a domestique now. That's the question there. But if you're UAE, you go to the Tour de France. If Pogacar is on the start list, he's all-out leader. But in your mind, you gotta have some kind of thoughts of like, what if Pogacar has bad luck and crashes out? Then we might have a secondary leader in the first week if we keep Yates up there for a week, for example. But in all honesty, if Pogacar is there, they need to go all out for Pogacar. I think it's as simple as that.
Who do you see? Who's going to step up and become? Okay, Ayuso is the easy answer, but who out of Almeida, McNulty, Yates, Vine, Groschartner, is any of them winning a World Tour 1 week this year? Is any of them winning the Giro? Which of them will be the best GC rider this year? Because I think they want and need one of them to step up as well.
Very good question. I think when it comes to Vine, the thing with Almeida, he came from Quickstep, he joined UAE. I don't consider him as having stepped up significantly from that Giro at Quickstep. He's moved up to be a bit better, I'd say, but not significantly, like a leap of like 10 to 20%, for example. That's not there. When it comes to Vine, there's that potential because he hasn't gone for proper GC and World Tour races, or at least achieved it yet. So I think Vine can achieve some kind of GC in a World Tour race. Whether that's directly winning it or top 5 in it, top 5 in a World Tour race, stage race, would already be a step forward when it comes to a GC, I'd say. And even better if that is based on the fact that he did a good time trial. So I think Vine can step up. I think McNulty can step up from last year because he was not having the best Paris-Nice. He was not having the best Tour de France. He was not having the best bloody year. Like, Mallorca challenge at the start, perfect. But when it comes to the rest of the year, not the best season. He had that one stage in the Tour de France, but no consistency, really. I think McNulty can make a step forward. He has the time trial to be a secondary time trialist in a time trial, like a 7th, 8th in a time trial, a 5th, a 4th maybe sometimes. So he has that ability. Climbing wise, on the long climbs, to be honest, if he does his Tour de France climbing performance of that one day, multiple times in a row in a 1 week race, he can compete for a 1 week stage race in World Tour. I think that's possible. So he has a space to move forward. I don't believe Groschartner will move forward. I don't think Adam Yates will make significant changes because he's been winning 1 week World Tour races, so he can do that again, I would say. So that possibility is there. When it comes to other growth in the entire team,
Who's the young riders they're developing? I mean, that's Ayuso, right? So
Ayuso.
yeah, I
Frere
guess,
in the
and
kiddo team.
Marcos Frere, 16-year-old son of Oscar Frere. So yeah, they've got a lot of chips. I mean, it's unlimited budget, isn't it? Because how a normal sort of conventional sponsor team, you'd be like, you can't infinitely just keep signing people like Yates and Groschardt, and then you'll end up like running out of money eventually and have a big crash. But if they just have infinite money to sign riders that they want, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, what do you think? I think they're going to be really tough for Jumbo Visma to beat in the UCI point ranking. They have just so many extra points coming in. Yates was, I think, a top 5, top 3, 4 scorer for Ineos last year. They got like McNulty might improve even more. Ayuso will probably score even more. Why can't he do well in World Tour 1D races, like even the Montreal and Quebec races? So Milano and Ackerman, they might split apart for both their sake. It might be a good idea to split them apart. Hodge might come back from he's had sickness or injury and start scoring as well, some stuff. So I think they'll win the UCI point ranking this year.
I think so as well, but I think it might be close if, for example, Wout ends up winning a monument. If, for example, Vingegaard ends up winning 1 week races now, if he becomes a bit more consistent throughout the season instead of getting second at Tirreno and then showing up at the Tour de France, outside of that, he didn't do like so many World Tour races, 1 week races, and so forth that he was winning them. So I think if Vingegaard can make that step, then it might be a bit closer. Otherwise, it will become difficult. I agree with that. So I'm also leaning more towards UAE Team Emirates doing that. Or, for example, I don't know, Quickstep probably can't compete anymore when it comes to the UCI rankings anymore. Victories,
No.
perhaps, but not in the single in the actual point system. Now, one more thing that I want to mention in this podcast: we've seen equipment changes. We don't often speak about this, but I think it's viable to do that on this specific podcast because Jumbo changed from Shimano to SRAM. I think they changed to reserve wheels
Yeah, speed plate
and
pedals.
speed plate pedals. When it comes to UAE, they changed to Shimano, and they also have Continental tires
New
now.
tires. New
I think
tires, baby.
we spoke about it all year.
Yeah, well, Pog spoke about it live to the cameras in Slovenia. And once you saw that, you're like, well, guess to get a new tire sponsor. Like, he if he's not happy with them,
Yeah,
it probably wasn't just that. Like, I'd be surprised if they weren't running in the Tour de France, if particularly on the Roubaix stage. I'd be really surprised if he wasn't running whatever tires they wanted to run. But yeah, it's a lot of changes, and it's good to see UAE. They're putting, Shimano on a Italian bike. They've been on Campagnolo before. Now, maybe it's a question of money. Maybe Shimano got more money. I don't think so. I think this is performance driven. This team doesn't need money. So, they don't need a little extra that Shimano might offer over Campag.
yeah.
Like Colnago is their bike sponsor, who's owned by the same company, I think, that provides the sponsorship dollars. So this seems performance driven. I remember in Liège or Flesh 21 or this year, last year, can't remember. Pog dropped his chain badly on a descent and was trying to get back on. So maybe there were issues with the shifting. I don't know. Maybe Shimano's lighter. Don't know. Ike Vesbeck on the recent interview said the performance differences in between group sets is minimal. It's more for Jumbo going from the Shimano group set means you leave the Shimano ecosystem. So
Yeah.
you now get a power meter that works. That's always a good start for a pro cycling team. Now they'll have a power meter that works because Shimano power meters, yeah, like unreal. They can choose their own pedals. They can choose their own wheels, everything. Whereas I think they have to, they choose Shimano pedals. So UAE, who else they get? What else they do? Is just the tires.
I think that's a step forward. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
Like Continental tires, probably one of the top of the game.
yeah. Who was it before? It was Pirelli, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember
We
when
talked about Trek.
I put
with
that
Pirelli.
clip on Twitter of Pogacar saying "fuck these tires," and then there was a Pirelli. This always happens. The Pirelli rep, I think, on his personal account, just in the replies, just correcting people, being like, "There's never been a problem. No team's ever complained." I was like, well, we'll see next year. I think if maybe UA didn't complain, but they're on Continental tires now. So, I mean, maybe Mads Pedersen changes, win every monument.
Is it
And the
also
Tour de
like?
France.
Can it also be that maybe it's bad luck? Maybe it's not the equipment, for example, but the riders
It could be
mentally.
completely random.
Yeah, and mentally the riders will be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, we're not comfortable using this equipment anymore." Pogacar might be like, "I'm not okay with this anymore." So
It could be that. Like, it's such a, are they tracking how many drop chains they have? And then do they have data on how many drop chains you'd expect? Like, I doubt it. It could just be
yeah,
that. It's just rider subjective. And that's also important. If Pogacar's going to be more comfortable changing to a different system, even if it's not even better, well, you just do it anyway, because that's like, you don't do the DSM, be like, well, actually, we have data that the drop chains is in line with the expected range. So to that, I mean, sometimes you have to do that as well, like not to change groups
yeah,
at mid-season. But yeah, it's interesting to see. And I think UAE, whilst maybe like they are just buying guys, they just buy guys top of the market. every time, who are already established riders, which is very expensive, but they're also trying to improve the team in other ways too, which is, I guess, good to see someone going up against. It's good to have like two or these big teams really battling, like UAE, Jumbo Visma, Bora coming in, Quickstep, Ineos. I think it's really good compared to the Team Sky days where you wouldn't say, like, Movistar weren't battling Team Sky in this way when it was
Yeah.
Quintana against Froome or Astana against Sky, even though the riders eventually did match up. Anyway, Pog will go Tour. He'll probably win a monument as well. I think he's doing the classics, RVV. Outgoing transfers next year, though, talking about team construction for the future. Trenton, Ackerman, Bennett, Soler, Hirschi, Polons, Gibbons, Hodge, Langen, Oliveira, Vink, Oliveira out of contract. I think, Benji, they need to be looking for a super rouleur to replace the Oliveira brothers and Trenton. I think they need to go after like a classics
Greg van
god.
Avermaet.
Yeah, well, maybe the greatest domestique in the history of cycling.
Geraint Thomas. Combination of both.
Thomas never go there. Thomas is going to get Remco to join Ineos.
Well, he's a rouleur on paper. He's got the climbing skills. He can do like a lot as a domestique for Pogacar. I'm not even joking. Imagine.
Never happening.
Probably never happening. Like, if we take a look at who's available when it comes to rouleurs, Dennis could switch team again.
Actually, that's something they might do.
Yeah.
Well, like, don't you think that would make he'd have a good compound score?
Yeah.
70 kilos. I think he'd have a good compound score. He's shown flashes. That's actually that's someone they might sign.
Hasn't done a Grand Tour at Jumbo. Maybe might not be happy about that. He did. Well, to be honest, he was irrelevant there. So,
I think he's okay. I mean, Roglic crashed out. Yeah,
that's true.
Heinrich Hausler, Christophe Lador. Do they just poach? Why don't they just steal from Jumbo? Just take Christophe Lador.
I'm the Hausler fanboy here, and I wouldn't even name Hausler.
No, I wouldn't say that. Yeah.
I wish they would, like, for a 5-year contract and make him focus on Roubaix every single time. Yeah, just a mil. Every single time, Roubaix free-for-all. He's allowed to go for it. I would love it. Arashiro from Bahrain. Nah, that's
Isn't Christophe Laporte the one?
Yeah, but...
they need classics. Their classics team is terrible. They have no sprinter for a classics. And then they need a rouleur. Isn't Laporte the rider they are missing? Jumbo barely need him. Like, they do, but, like, Jumbo have, like, a stacked classic squad. Like, the difference between them and UAE is huge.
Is Cavagna of these days even in that category? Of, like,
breakaway
management?
They might go fit. That also... I mean, Alexis Brunel might have put them on French rouleurs, but Castroviejo from Ineos... he's 35. I think they're going to get someone like that. Oh, Bettiol. Oh, it's Bettiol's who's going, right?
Oh, yeah. He's available.
It actually does fit really neatly.
Yeah, it would.
Like, it's the perfect signing for them. Yeah. Cobble team can do a hard lead out for Pog on like a Lombardia climb. Versatile stage race domestique.
We're doing the work for them.
I mean, I'm pretty sure they know who Alberto Bettiol is. He won Tour of Flanders, and he's Italian.
He rode for Pogacar in the cobble
Exactly,
stage.
Yeah. He already submitted his CV. It's like when the kid turns up the fish and chip shop with their CV when they're 16.
Quick question. We've talked about the potential transfers in the future, but what the hell is this team going to achieve next year? Because we can say, oh, this rider will go there, this rider will go there. I think Pogacar is going to win the Tour de France.
Maybe he'll probably be the favorite. I think Vingegaard will beat him by probably 2 minutes, maybe 2.5. I'm
pretending this is a hot take.
Which one of us is a hot take?
I think both of us were pretending.
I reckon Vingegaard beating him by 2 minutes, people won't believe.
Yeah,
I think Puy Dome, Vingegaard's just going to drop him. But then Vingegaard also could crash. Pogacar could also take him by surprise on other stages. Of course, there's a lot of difficult like that. Stage 20 is really, really complicated with long climbs.
yeah,
But yeah, I think Tour de France, I don't really see Yates helping that much if he goes. I think Giro, someone out of Vine, Almeida, and McNulty will ascend, and maybe they won't win, but they'll
yeah.
be with Thomas, Evenepoel, Roglic, and relevant. And they might come fourth, they might come third, but they'll really be in the group competing.
Yeah.
And I think Ayuso wins the Vuelta
Agree.
easily.
I think for me the season is like this. Remco wins the Giro, Pogacar wins the Tour, and Ayuso wins the Vuelta. I'm probably at the end of the season gonna look back and I'm gonna be like, Benji, what the fuck did you say in January on the UAE podcast? Because the season looks very different from what you predicted. But that's how I see it now, because on paper, Remco should be able to get that Giro home as long as nothing crazy happens. Crashes can happen, stuff like that. Maybe a tactical fuck up can happen, but on paper, he should be the favorite for the Giro, Remco Evenepoel, I'd say, even with Primoz Roglic there. Tour de France, Pogacar, he'll probably be favored because of the races that he'll win beforehand. And I don't know. I just have this feeling about Pogacar that he's always relatively consistent. And next to that, he's got the fact that he's so good at avoiding crashing and so forth. And when he crashes, he's lucky. So I'm going to stick by that throughout 2023. Ayuso is the one that will make another step forward and win the Vuelta. I agree with that. Now, when it
So
comes
that'll
to
make them the best team in cycling by far, right? 2 Grand
yeah,
Tours, some other wins too. They'd
RVV
easily
Pogacar,
claim that.
difficult, but I believe.
No, because Trenton will have probably taken, lost another 1%. I think RVV
Wellens?
will be. Is he even good at RVV?
I don't remember, but I recall him
Who is
having
Tim
good cobble
Wellens?
racing. Wellens is Tige Benoot.
I mean, that's both rude to Tim Wellens, but also rude to Benoit. Tim Wellens has 34 professional victories.
Yeah, that's
Tage
true.
Benoit, I think, has 2. But then on the other hand, Tim Wellens has done 27 monuments, and the last podium was Lombardia in 2018. He's never.
Wellens podium Lombardia?
No, sorry, the last top 10. The last top 10.
Oh,
He's
Jesus.
never top 10 Liège or Ronde van Vlaanderen. Never even been top 20, I don't think.
Well,
So
he looked close when he attacked in Amstel when it comes to winning that race, eh? He attacked
doesn't
the
he always
full
do meme
Ineos
attacks?
train. When he attacked the full Ineos train, Ben Turner
Yeah,
behind him.
that was really effective. So yeah, it's he is a better winner than Benoit. Is he a better domestique? Not convinced. But as a semi-classics rider, he is better at finishing. Smarter rider probably for winning. I don't
Hirschi
know.
should do cobbles.
Here
I
she's a god.
think Gerard's better in 2019, 2018. I don't remember. In Big Bang Tour, 15 on the stage, 17 on the stage, something like that. And that's between the riders that can top 50 Roubaix, for example. So he can ride on cobbles. If he can top 50 Roubaix and you can ride on hills, then you can top 10 Tour of Flanders. That's my new math.
What I'd like to see this year is the team starting to leverage these riders and all their talents a bit more in a more cohesive way, to get the pieces to fit together. I think really
Yeah.
should be a goal this year, and what they've been struggling to do, I think, outside of mountain stages or hilltop finishes in stage races with the train of Soler, McNulty, Micah, they've figured that out. They go well with that. In fact, that train dropped the Jumbo-Visma domestiques pretty consistently last year and dropped Evenepoel and Carpena last year. But in the classics, I think they need to do that as well. Pogacar shouldn't be starting Quarmont, doing the fastest probably Quarmont ever to drop everybody fully solo. I would really,
But
as you said, Hirschi, Wellens, Shortbacks, whoever else,
yeah,
Trentin, wouldn't it be more effective to have them do a lead out on Quarmont to actually give Pogacar a launch pad?
I think one thing is difficult. I think Pogacar also wants to make sure that he can individualize the opposing teams to one rider per team to make sure he can't be countered afterwards. And if Quickstep's there with two riders, if Laporte and Wout van Aert are both there, if Alpecin's there with Van der Poel and some magical person that might show up, I don't know. Like, I think he's trying to avoid that by going hard, go home, and see if he can drop them. But what if he, for example, has a steam base or just follows on the Oude Quaremont and he goes ham on Paterberg? On paper, he's also with four people, right? Or does he expect to make the gap on the Oude Quaremont to make sure that he can expand the gap with the others towards the Paterberg, and that way have a bigger gap so that that group of like secondary riders with domestiques of other teams aren't there, so that a Wout might not say, oh, I've got Laporte behind, might as well wait.
Oh, I think I just mean like they do a Jumbo Visma style like Calais lead out for
Yeah,
him just to like launch him. I think, steady pacing to the finish obviously won't work. Also climb, but yeah, he
but
needs more help on those
do
races.
they have the rider like a Nathan van Hooijdonk to make the move before the climb to get them to the front to beat the Nathan van Hooijdonk to the bottom of that climb? That's where I think the issue
I mean,
lies.
Trenton or Wellens got to do it. Like they have to. They got to figure it out. Or
Yeah,
maybe they can't. But that's what I want to see. They need to be sorting that out for Pogacar because he like maybe with better positioning and a lead out, maybe he just drops Van der Poel on Quarmont last year in Flanders. He
well,
nearly did.
in current CX form, maybe.
I mean, who knows what? I don't know. I've been watching CX. Say his back hurts or something.
Yeah, his back hurts again, and Wout's been dominating everything.
Van der Poel doesn't have a chronic back issue, according to the Rudolphs. It's just constantly reoccurring over a long period of time. So, not chronic though, but it's from too much racing. So he'll
Yeah,
just rest for 10 days and then back out there,
according to them,
buddy.
it's unrelated to the previous back pain, but it's due to heavy racing, and they're fixing it by continuing racing.
Yeah. Poor MVP's back. Put together sticky tape. Like, come on, buddy. Gotta get out there. I don't know what his schedule will look like early in the year. I hope MVP is okay.
Yeah,
Classics needs MVP
for sure.
as a
Cycling needs him.
protagonist. Yeah. But yeah. So you think UAE Benji will have a better year than last year?
I think they'll have a better year than last year and a better year than Jumbo Visma.
Okay. I think. Yeah, I think they're gonna. I don't know. I think they're going to win a lot. They might win Polonia. They'll win UAE Tour. They'll win Skoda Tour of Luxembourg. They'll win Coppa Agostini. I think they will win a lot. I think they'll win more than Jumbo. I think they'll win over 50 races comfortably, probably. Particularly if Milano holds form and you send him to like San Juan or something, he could probably win 3 of the sprints straight off the bat in a couple of
Jakobsen is
weeks.
going there.
Oh, really? Fuck me. San Juan got a better start list than half the World Tour races. But I don't think they win a Grand Tour, even though I think Ayuso win the Vuelta. So maybe Ayuso does win the Vuelta. I don't know. I think they missed the Tour de France again, and Pog probably. I don't see how he doesn't win Lombardia again. So they will win a monument, but then the classics, I think they'll be a bit weaker. I think Pog is still. I still think there is a huge burden on him, on Pogacar,
Yeah,
as to be the classics leader, the Italian classics leader, and the GC Tour de France leader is a huge burden, and
hot
maybe he'll
take.
hold it up again.
Pogacar wins 3 monuments and a Grand Tour this year.
Well, so at Liège, is he doing Liège?
Liège, Lombardia, and RVV.
Yeah, I mean he could for sure. Liège is tough to. Isn't Alaphilippe targeting Liège? I mean Pogacar's just better than
Liège
Alaphilippe
and
now.
RVV.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, probably that'd be like one of the greatest seasons ever. I'd love to see it. It'd be great to see how Jumbo-Visma counters it because, yeah,
Yeah.
I want to see on the last Claremont, Van Aert, Van der Poel, Pogacar going head to head, and who can
Hausler
survive. And Hausler.
and
Hausler's
Aramburu.
actually already ahead. He's smarter than them.
Where's Aramburu?
Actually, where is Aramburu? What's happening with him?
He's probably sent to the wrong races.
Like, are you concerned or are you blaming Movistar?
I completely forgot he existed the last year.
Oh,
So-
wow, friendship with Aramburu over.
Yeah. Sorry, the memes are over. It's not funny anymore. So
Would you sign Aramburu? Will UAE sign him in 2025?
I
He
would
fits
not
their
sign
rider
him.
profile.
Why would you sign him when he's basically Corvi?
Because they like signing the same exact rider over and over again.
Garcia Cortina, we can get him all at this point.
Yeah.
Fraile?
I mean, Garcia Cortina's a little bit different. I think Aramburu will go there, actually. Now that I think about it, I think they'll sign him in 25.
Yeah, okay. I think
Anyway.
Fraile could end up there.
Yeah, do you reckon they'll get the Ineos domestic old guys like Castroviejo and Freyler when they're out of contract?
I don't know. Kwiatkowski? Do a Micah thing?
Nah, I don't see Kwiatkowski or Thomas. I don't think any of the old like classic
Yeah,
Sky
yeah.
guys. I don't see them going to UAE. I think they've earned a lot of money during the last 8 years. They're not. I don't think they'll do that. But yeah, that was the UAE team preview. Let us know what you think. Is it still just a Pog one-man show? Have they successfully diversified away from him with, McNulty coming through, Ayuso, Almeida, Vine, Yates? What do you expect from all those riders? I mean, if you sign enough talent and you put them in the right environment, like a Jay Vine, perhaps great things will happen in the Grand Tour and in general classification. So that's what I can't wait to see. He's, of course, personally, I'm the most excited to see how he goes if he does the Giro. I can't wait to see what he does on a team like UAE. So rooting for him there. But he's also got to fight against his teammates, Almeida and co. So it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic works. Well, not fight against them, but it could be like the Vuelta sort of strategy, everyone for themselves. So we'll see how that evolves, whether the team changes. Thanks as always. Thanks to Zwift, and we'll see you in the next one. Ciao.